You, sir.
Thank you very much for a kind introduction. What a topic. Dr. Bansi, is he around? Huh. What a topic. Hey, can you just put my slides, please? What a topic. Bansi, at the outset, I must thank you and your entire team for calling me here. Huh? क्या बात है? Statin plus ACE plus empagliflozin plus liraglutide is immortality. मैं कंफ्यूज हो गया. किसका immortality? पेशेंट का कि कंपनी का? Such a great topic, but I try and do something about it.
I'm sure you must have enjoyed it.
I enjoy. I was confused first. I was thoroughly confused कि ये क्या बोल रहा है. Right? The best definition of immortality is someone who hasn't died yet. But look at it in the context of a diabetic. We should look at it in a diabetic. A normal, this is the Indian data, a 30-year-old is expected to live up to 75 years. But if a diabetic becomes, a young man of 30 becomes diabetic at 30, he stands to lose 14.5 years of his life. So when you talk of immortality, nobody is immortal. जो इधर आया है वो जाने वाला है. हाँ. So our aim is to make this 30-year-old diabetic live happily, complication-free till 75 or 90. Yes. And that is what immortality in my terms would mean. So what does immortality mean to me? That we all want more time and we wanted to have quality time. Now what does a diabetic really die of? 80% of type 2 diabetic patients will ultimately die of a macrovascular disease, whether it's a cardiovascular event or a stroke or whatever. 60% of end-stage renal disease patients are diabetics. And now we have a new epidemic on the card, NAFLD, and India is the epicenter of it. We are an insulin-resistant population basically, and insulin resistance leads to fatty liver. And today, NASH is becoming a leading indication for liver transplant in the United States. So let us look at whatever topic Bansi and team has given me, statin, ACE inhibitor. Let us see what statin does. Look at this. Dyslipidemia is the single most important cardiovascular risk factor for myocardial infarction. This is the Inter-Heart study. If you look at it, there are 9 modifiable factors which account for 90% of first myocardial infarction risk worldwide. And if you see there, diabetes is only 10%. Lipids, right at the end there, is 50%. And smoking is 36% right here. But if you see here, abdominal obesity, central obesity, insulin resistance 20%, hypertension 18%. So diabetes is low down. There are other factors, lipids, hypertension, insulin resistance, which is the cause for such a increase in myocardial infarction. In India, almost 9 out of 10 diabetics have dyslipidemia. Whether it is male, female, they are all there. And they have a classic dyslipidemia, diabetics. Low HDL, high triglyceride, and a normal or slightly elevated LDL, which are basically small, dense particles which are highly atherogenic. These are statin studies which show the relative risk reduction by use of any of the statins. Large number of studies have all shown good benefits in giving statin, lowering the LDL cholesterol. And this slide shows you that lower the LDL, less is the chance of a myocardial infarction. So that is where the statin stand. Statin has to be given to every diabetic. This is the ADA guideline. If it is less than 40 years and no risk factor, you may not give him if his lipids are okay. But otherwise, everybody needs a statin. And what you are today looking at is whether giving a moderate dose statin or a high dose statin. So statin is there to stay. No argument on that. And that is helpful to our patients. Let us look at the ACE inhibitors. Hypertension and diabetics, it's partners in crime. They're both together. But you look at type 1 diabetic, initially they never have hypertension. But when a type 1 diabetic gets hypertension, it means he's already developed a diabetic nephropathy. And that is when hypertension begins to manifest in a type 1. But in a type 2, it is there even before he had diabetes. 50% of type 2 diabetics have hypertension and 50% of hypertensives have type 2 diabetes. And that is a part of insulin resistance and the metabolic syndrome that you see. So, hypertension is an integral part of type 2 diabetes. And cardiovascular mortality risk doubles with every 20 by 10 millimeters of mercury increase. See here now. Here it is 1, 20 by 10 increase, it doubles, 4 births, 8 births. So this is what hypertension can do. And this is a slide from the UKPDS study. In UKPDS, you had tight glycemic control, getting HbA1c to below 7. And they had a tight blood pressure control, which actually was 144 by 82. That was the average blood pressure control. But look at the benefit. The blue, what you see on the bars, is a glycemic control giving you the benefit. And the brown or orange, whatever you want to call it, is the good blood pressure control. So you see stroke, 5% reduction because of good glycemic control, but 44% reduction with hypertension control. Similarly, any diabetic endpoint, diabetic death, even microvascular complication, which we believe is because of hyperglycemia. But there too hypertension has a role to play. So if you ask me personally, in a type 2 diabetic, controlling the blood pressure will give you much more better results than controlling the sugar. Which does not mean don't control the sugar. No, please don't misunderstand me. But blood pressure control is a very important part in immortality. So these are studies which show that lower the blood pressure, lesser is the deterioration in the eGFR over years. These are some of the studies, in fact 40 randomized control studies, which shows good blood pressure control will have benefits. Now these are the anti-hypertensive efficacy of different drugs, and it is placebo subtracted. You have hydrochlorothiazide, ACE inhibitor, ARB, beta blockers, calcium channel blockers. Alpha blockers has not been put here. But if you look at the ACE inhibitors and the ARBs, they look very identical. Very, very identical. So there is nothing really to choose between an ACE inhibitor and an ARB in terms of hypertension control. But ARB has less side effects, especially the dry cough which you see, which is not uncommon with an ACE inhibitor, and cost. This is the HOPE study done by Salim Yusuf long ago. And what did it show? That using ramipril, that is the ACE inhibitor, in controlling blood pressure, good. CV death reduced by 26%, myocardial infarction 20%, and so on. Very good results by the use of ACE inhibitor. And this has been shown that this effect is not just the control of blood pressure. Along with the control of blood pressure, there are other pleiotropic effects of an ACE inhibitor in terms of vasodilatation and endothelial things, because there are ACE is there in the tissues also. Ramipril in diabetic nephropathy, it reduces the protein excretion, urinary albumin excretion significantly over an 18 months period. So ARB, as good as ACE inhibitor, but ARB are better tolerated and have a longer duration of action and possibly more effective. So this is my deviation from the topic given to me. They said only ACE, but ARB is what we use, and it is good enough, if not better. Then we come to EMPA, SGLT2, which is the talk of the town today, especially after SGLT2 has gone generic. It's become a field day for everybody. These are all the trials of SGLT2 for MACE. So what is the first message? SGLT2 reduces atherosclerotic events in secondary prevention cohorts but not in primary prevention. So secondary prevention, it does help. But when it comes to heart failure and CV death, that's message 2. Unlike MACE, heart failure and CV death reduction is observed in both primary and secondary prevention cohorts. That is very important. And as far as renal outcome is concerned, consistent and impressive renal benefits are observed in both primary and secondary prevention. So this is a molecule which you can use right from day one. The day he is diagnosed as diabetic. Why not? This is a molecule that will preserve his kidney, will prevent his heart failure if he is got. But when I look at my 30-year-old, he has no heart problem, he has no kidney problem, he has just been diagnosed, poor fellow. तो उसको देगा क्या? Yes, why not? Because that will reduce his sugar. There is no question of hypoglycemia. It's a good molecule to use, and especially now that it has become generic and cheap. 10 रुपए का गोली है. It makes a difference. So SGLT2 and GLP-1 over the years, the recommendations have changed. 2015 it was just for glycemic control. 2016 in CV and mortality benefits were noted. 18 benefits in atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease and heart failure. Then nephroprotection. And then now in 2020 it says irrespective of what the HbA1c is, whether it is high, low, nothing, you can give to every patient as a preventive for heart failure, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease and CKD. Talking about CKD, if you look at the leaflets insert, it all says that below an eGFR of 45 do not use an SGLT2. But what is the recommendation of KidGo, Kidney Foundation? What do they say? They said do not initiate a SGLT2 below eGFR of 30. Do not initiate. But if the patient is already on a SGLT2, you could continue that even below eGFR of 30. Because this drug is not nephrotoxic. It is nephro-friendly. And to just go a little bit more extreme, even if you have one nephron which is left there, the SGLT2 could benefit that nephron. But you will not initiate it below 30 for the simple reason that the glycemic control would be negligible. Because if eGFR is low, the glycosuria is going to be low, so giving an SGLT2 is not going to make much difference. So that is the connection there. Now we come to liraglutide. All the CVOTs with GLP-1 have, actually all the other GLP-1s have not shown a very significant cardiovascular outcome. Look at LEADER. This is composite endpoints. First occurrence of CV death is reduced by 13%, 1-3. CV death relative reduction 22%, all-cause mortality 15%, non-fatal myocardial infarction 12%, non-fatal stroke 11%, heart failure 12%, and so on. Retinopathy no difference, nephropathy some improvement. And you have the SUSTAIN 6 with semaglutide. And look at the things. When you talk of cardiovascular death, EMPA, good, LEADER, okay, SUSTAIN increases the thing slightly, heart failure. If you look at myocardial infarction and stroke, SGLT2 slight increase in stroke, but that has not been seen across the board with all the different molecules. In EMPA, initial study, EMPA-REG showed an increase in stroke, but other ones have not shown. The bottom line as far as the liraglutide is concerned, compared to standard care, for every 100 patients with type 2 diabetes and high CV risk, treatment with liraglutide for 4 years will result in 2 less CV events, 2 less cases of nephropathy, 1 extra case of acute gallbladder disease where he might have to undergo surgery, and 2 extra cases of discontinuation due to adverse events. So this is in short what liraglutide would be. But to just summarize this, SGLT2 have a more robust and consistent effect on prevention of heart failure. That is true. It has no effect on the atherosclerotic process. So by reducing heart failure risk, it reduces the overall cardiovascular mortality. Whereas GLP-1 have proven CV safe efficacy, have a more robust, consistent effect on preventing atherosclerotic events. If you see an SGLT2, the effect starts within 3 to 6 months. You can see the graph, deviating, that there is benefit coming. But when you look at a GLP-1, the benefit starts after a year, telling us that there is some other mechanism, probably an anti-atherogenic mechanism, which is giving you that benefit. So, looking at ACE, statin, empagliflozin and liraglutide for immortality, what do you have? Number needed to treat the patient to prevent one patient death. Ramipril, 32 patients for 4.5 years. Simvastatin, 56 patients for 5 years. Empagliflozin, 39 patients for 2.6 years. And liraglutide, 71 patients, 3.8 years, and you will save one patient from getting a heart attack. And my patient is just 30 years old. He has just been diagnosed as diabetic. Do I give him all this to make him immortal? Not my cup of tea. CV disease exists as a continuum. I won't go into the details there. But look at this. CV disease can occur even before the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. You look at the bottom line, risk factor for CV disease, then there is development of atherosclerosis, microvascular complication. And all this starts 15 years before the onset of diabetes. So it is not your hyperglycemia, it is nothing. There are other factors which are working to do this for your patient, and you need to address those factors. 83% of type 2 diabetics have insulin resistance. None of these 4 drugs are going to address insulin resistance. Yes, liraglutide and SGLT2 by virtue of weight loss may have an effect on your insulin resistance, but per se no. This is the manifestation of insulin resistance. You look at the last panel there. The clinical consequences: diabetes, hypertension, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, heart failure, sleep apnea, PVD, stroke, PCOS, NAFLD. These are all caused by insulin resistance. And my 30-year-old is going to get all these things if I don't prevent it. And none of these drugs are going to prevent that. Is there evidence that treating insulin resistant will help? Yes. Look at this IRIS study, which came in 2014. What did they do here? Almost 5,000 patients who are non-diabetics, who had a TIA or an ischemic stroke, were tested to see if they have insulin resistance by doing HOMA. If the HOMA was more than 3, they labeled them as insulin resistance and gave them pioglitazone. And they followed them up for 5 years. What are the findings? Recurrent stroke reduced by 24%. Myocardial infarction reduced by 24%. Liraglutide, it is 13%. New onset of diabetes reduced by 52%. And there was the first time that this is purely a therapy directed at treating insulin resistance, nothing else, in a non-diabetic, and giving you the benefit. But here there was a subgroup of pre-diabetics, and there were about 2,885 patients in this IRIS group who are pre-diabetic. And in them, look at the results. Stroke reduced by 33%. Acute coronary syndrome by 52%. New onset of diabetes by 80% over a median period of 4.8 years. Why shouldn't I give this drug to my 30-year-old who has come to me today with diabetes? These are the protective effects of glitazone on various organs. Look at that, 47% reduction in stroke and 28, this is in the proactive study where they had given pioglitazone to patients who already had a myocardial infarction. So 28% reduction in reinfarction, 37% reduction in acute coronary event. But let me tell you, there was an increased incidence of heart failure in these patients. But the mortality was not there. They all, even though they developed heart failure, they lived longer. Look at this, but look at the last one there, the liver. That is the epidemic today. And this epidemic is driven by insulin resistance. Average diabetic patient that you treat, you do a USG and the report will come grade 1 fatty liver, grade 2 fatty liver. And the treatment is pioglitazone. This was Bromwald's Corner. How to live to 100 before developing clinical coronary artery disease. A suggestion. Basically, it was all about statin. That's all, because he's a cardiologist. So, is there a poly pill that we are looking at to give this 30-year-old which will keep him fine? The poly pill should be something which could prevent atherosclerosis, preserve his beta cells, remove all the problems that are there with insulin resistance. He should not gain weight. HbA1c should be controlled, blood pressure should be controlled. So your statin and ACE or ARB is on the card. But you need much more than that. So evidence-based, what we have just said, statin and ACE ARB for BP lowering is there to stay. SGLT2 should be there for everybody unless they can't, they have some infection or something. GLP-1, very guarded, very expensive. It would cost 1.5 lakhs per year minimum. But here, what I would like to add and what should have been done by the scientific committee would be, you add a metformin pioglitazone. That 30-year-old, if you give him metformin pioglitazone, he will remain normal and good for next 50 years. And he will thank you. But he will not know what you have done for him. But you will at least be satisfied that you have done something for him. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.